All right, so the warm-up says, sketch and label the following angles. So a pair of vertical angles, angle 1 and 2. So we know vertical angles are formed by intersecting lines, and they are the angles that are opposite of one another. So for example, angle 1 and angle 2 could be this one and this one, or you could put them in the other two spots. What would a pair of complementary adjacent angles look like? Complementary adjacent angles 3 and 4. What does it mean to be complementary and adjacent? Complementary means sums to 90. Adjacent means next to each other. So we're going to draw a 90-degree angle. Then we're going to draw a line going through it. It doesn't have to be exactly in the middle, or a ray going through it. And 3 and 4 would be the two little pieces. Together, 3 and 4 add to 90, and they are adjacent to each other. So something like that. You don't really need it. Alright, so on the front, it's all vocabulary. So even though, first of all, the note packet you picked up is for several days, but today's notes are 2 pages front and back because the pictures take up a lot of space. Okay. So in this unit, some of you would benefit from using highlighters or colored pencils or colored pens. So if you have anything like that, you might want to use it on the notes so that whenever I'm highlighting it on the board, that way you have a visual representation of what the transversal is without having to read. If you don't have something, then you could just darken it with a pencil. But if you have highlighters, I used to have highlighters to borrow, but they're all dried out. So. All right, so the first one is a transversal. A transversal is the line that intersects 2 or more lines. So on the warm-up problem, this line L, see the little L at the tip, that was my transversal. It cut through the 2 lines. In this picture, line Q will be my transversal. And that's what I'm saying. Colors are nice because you can look at the word transversal and look at the highlighted part and you know that's the transversal. Now if we were writing that out, since there are not 2 points on the line for me to name it, I would call it by the name at the tip. So I would call this line Q is a transversal. All right, the next one are corresponding angles. And the definition of corresponding angles are angles that share a similar location in relation to the transversal and each of the other 2 lines. So you want to think about corresponding angles as being in the same spot. So like top right, top left, bottom left, bottom left, bottom right, bottom right. So when I'm saying that, when I look at these, this would be the top right. Come down to the other line, the top right would be angle 5. So one example would be angle 1 and angle 5. Those are corresponding angles. I'm only going to ask you to highlight one pair so that if we label them all, you'll get confused. So just leave that in the marking. But can anyone also identify another pair that they think would be corresponding in the same relative location? Katie? Angle 3 is in the bottom left. Come down. Angle 7 is in the bottom left. Yes, 3 and 7. 4 and 8 would also be a pair. Top left, and bottom right, 2 and 6. Those would also be corresponding. I only want us to write down one for the picture because it'll make it easier. Alternate interior. Alternate interior angles are 2 angles that lie interior, inside of the 2 lines, and they alternate. They go on opposite sides of the transversal. So alternate interior angles, which, actually let me go back 1 second. Corresponding angles, you will get to abbreviate CA, so if you want to jot that down, CA, corresponding angles. Transversal, there's no abbreviation. Alternate interior would be AIA. We'll use these in our proofs too eventually, so instead of having to write that out every time. AIA. So again, they're going to be inside of the lines and they're going to alternate. So one example would be 2 and 8. See how they alternate across the transversal, they're on opposite sides, and they're inside. So angle 2 and angle 5. Only mark those in the picture, and I'm just tracing the corners. I'm not putting congruent markings right now because they don't look congruent.
That's angle 8.
Well, thank you. That is angle 8. Now 5 and what other angle would also be alternate interior angles? Yes, 5 and 3. Don't mark them on your picture because it'll get confusing. But 5 and 3 would also be another pair. All right, the next one are alternate exterior angles. So this would be abbreviated AEA. So these are going to lie outside exterior, and they're opposite, alternating, on opposite sides of the transversal. So they're going to be angles that alternate outside. So for example, angle 1 is outside, and then angle 7 is outside, and these are on opposite sides of the transversal. So angle 1 and angle 7. Who could identify the other pair? That would be alternate exterior. One other pair that would be alternate exterior. Jeremiah?
Angle 4 and angle 6.
Good. Angle 4 and 6. Alternating opposite sides of the transversal outside of the two lines. Okay, 2 types left. We have same side interior angles, which will be abbreviated SSI. If you want to put SSIA, you can too, since they're interior angles. So these are 2 angles that are going to lie inside, interior, between the 2 lines, and they're going to be on this same side of the transversal. So the name kind of lends itself to where they're located. So an example, inside, same side would be 2 and 5. So angle 2 and angle 5 are one pair of same side interior angles. The other pair would be, Marquise?
Angle 3 and 8.
Good. 3 and 8 are also same side interior. Last type we have here are same side exterior. Same side exterior, SSE. Those are exactly what they sound. They're on the same side of the transversal, but they're outside of the lines. So exterior, angle 1 is outside of the 2 lines. Same side, angle 6. These are both exterior, outside of the lines, and they're on the same side of the transversal. Who can identify what the other pair would be? Maddie? Good. 4 and 7 would be the other pair. Very good. All right, so this is going to be a good visual representation for you to look back at to see the different types. Bless you. The first example asks us to identify all of the pairs of each type of angle. Okay. So again, you have to think through the picture. Some students like to highlight the 2 lines. Some students like to highlight the transversal. If it helps you, you can. Okay, so whenever it says interior, that means inside, in my case, yellow lines. If it says exterior, that will mean outside of my yellow lines. And then the transversal, if it says alternating, that'll mean it's going on opposite sides of the red line. If it says same side, it's same side of the red line. So if the colors help, go for it. All right, corresponding are the ones that students always forget about. These don't really describe in the word. I mean, correspond is something that matches up to something else. So you can think of it like that. That is the same relative location. So that is, your top right, top left, top left. So I'll give the first one, angle 2 and angle 6. Angle 2 and 6, top right, top right. So I'll say angle 2 and angle 6. You do want to put the word and between them and don't just do a big list. Who can give me another pair of corresponding angles? Marquise?
Angles 1 and 5.
1 and 5. Who can give me another one? I'm going to start calling on you guys. Only 3 people are volunteering. So if you don't want to be called on when you're not prepared, just raise your hand when you are prepared. Noah?
Angles 3 and 7.
3 and 7. And the last one's Luke?
Angles 4 and 8.
4 and 8. Very good. Next type, and that's all of them. Okay. Next type says, identify a pair of alternate interior angles. So again, interior means that they're inside the yellow. Alternating means that they're on opposite sides of the transversal. Justin?
Angles 4 and 5.
Good. 4 and 5. 4 is inside, 5 is inside, and they are alternating. And there's one more pair. Marquise?
Angles 3 and 6.
3 and 6. Alternating inside. Very good. It's really important that you're able to classify these before we get into the problems. That's why we spend a little bit more time on this. All right, next one is alternate exterior. So outside of my yellow lines, alternating across the transversal. Noah?
Angles 1 and 8.
Angles 1 and 8. Very good. And Lauren? 2 and 7. Yep. Okay, I did that earlier too. Thank you, Kale, for correcting me. All right. So you'll notice that corresponding is the one that has the most. There's 4 sets of them. All the other ones you're pretty much going to have 2, as long as there's not 3 lines in the pictures or 4 lines, as long as there's 2 lines. Next one, same side, interior. So inside my yellow lines on the same side of the transversal. Justin? Angle 4 and angle 6. Those are both inside, same side, and then the other would be, Kale?
Angle 3 and angle 5.
Good, angle 3 and 5. Last type, same side exterior. So on the same side of the transversals, but outside of my 2 lines. Same side exterior. Maddie? 1 and 7, very good. And our last pair, Brett? 2 and 8. Good. Outside, same side. Use the words to help you. The only one you really have to memorize, I feel like, is corresponding. All the other ones you could probably context clues, figure it out. All right. Now let's make it a little bit more confusing. We have a lot of lines and a lot of lines cutting through them. Name the 2 lines and the transversal that form each pair of angles. Then classify the pair of angles as corresponding, alternate interior, alternate exterior, etc. Right now it seems really confusing to memorize all those words, but after a couple days you will get them because you'll see them so much. So what I suggest that you do is I suggest that the first thing you do is trace these angles. Trace the corner of the angles. Okay, so angle 2, find it in the picture and just trace, don't trace the whole thing, just trace the little corner. Angle 3, do the same thing. Alright, now the transversal, I'd suggest you identify that first, even though it comes second in my description. So I would identify the transversal. Now the transversal is going to be the line that they share. Okay, so it's going to be the line that both of them touch. So the transversal, they are both going to touch that line. So when we look at our blue angles, we can see that the one side touches this line, and it also touches this line. So that would be line, look at the tip, line F. is my transversal. The other two lines would be the other sides that they touch. So this one also touches line A, and this one also touches line B. You can just put A and B, I guess, because they already would put the word line for us. And then we're also supposed to classify those. So are they corresponding? Are they alternate interior? Are they alternate exterior? Are they same side interior or same side exterior? What do we think? Marquise?
Alternate interior.
Very good. These are alternate. They toggle across the transversal, alternate, and they're inside of the two lines. Normally, I would put my abbreviation AIA, but since it's the first day, I'm writing it out just so you hear it and see it a little bit more. And for those of you that might be a little bit confused, you may, once you identify the two lines, it might help if you trace them in color. And then you'll see that these are alternating and they're inside. All right, same picture, different set of angles. Do the same thing, trace the angles. So trace angle 1 and angle 4. Okay, always identify the transversal first. It's the easiest one to identify. Which line do they both touch with the sides of their angles? Marquise? Line F. They both touch line F. So what would the other two lines be then? Maddie? No. You don't want to think about the vertex itself where it touches. You want to think about the side of the angle that I traced. This side and this side. Jeremiah? C and D. And that's actually a good point for me to emphasize. You don't want to look at the vertex, because the vertex is going to fall on 3 different lines at the same time. You want to look at the side. So these two sides go on the transversal. This side is C, and this side is D. So those are my other two lines. Now we have to classify them. Now, some students will have trouble looking at the two lines sideways. So if you're a visual person, you may want to turn your paper this way so that the lines are going horizontally, and then that may make it easier for you to look. You don't have to, but some people need that. So first of all, notice that they're inside the yellow lines, right? And they're alternating. So they're inside and alternating, so they're also alternate interior angles. Same as the last ones, but different lines that they were relating to. See if you guys can try 4 and 5, and then we'll go over them. And then we're going to learn some properties about these angles. Make sure you classify them even though there's not a line for that. So classify them as one of the types that way. All right, so here's 6 and 7. Who can tell me what the transversal? Remember, you always want to identify the transversal first. Maddie? Line A is the line they both touch. Then the other two lines are the lines that they also touch the sides. So that would be C and D. Now, classifying them. First, I would look and see, are they both inside? Are they both outside? What do we think? Are they both inside? Are they both outside, or is one inside and one outside of my lines? Looking at the pink lines I traced. One is inside the two lines and one is outside. So that means it can't be exterior or interior. So that eliminates everything except corresponding. Should be corresponding. But also look at the location, depending on if you turn your paper or not. They are in the same exact location. So these are corresponding angles. Corresponding angles. All right, last one. we had angles 7 and 5. So again, trace the corners. Who can tell me what my transversal is? Which is the transversal? Noah?
Line D.
Line D. And so that makes the other two lines line A and B. Okay, and again, as I highlight those, a lot of you may say, oh, I think I have the wrong answer. I saw some of you with exterior angles written down. These are inside. They're on the same side of the transversal. So these should be same side interior. I'm telling you that colors help. They really, really, really do. So if you want to grab a pack of colored pencils at the dollar store or even crayons, something, it will help you to trace the two lines. The transversal, you don't really have to trace it, but the two lines will help you see inside, outside. All right, the next page, we don't really have much to write down. There are a bunch of theorems though, okay? So, first of all, notice that these are theorems and postulates relating to parallel lines. Parallel lines only. So you will have to know that the lines are parallel to use these theorems. And you'll notice that the theorems are written in conditional statements, which is why we learned if-thens. Okay, this is why we learned all those sentence things. If two lines are parallel, or if two parallel lines are crossed by a transversal, then corresponding angles are congruent. This is called the corresponding angles postulate. When we use this in a proof, you can write corresponding angle postulate, or you can write this, which this is the reason most of you will choose. If lines parallel, then corresponding angles are congruent. Which to write it out. Now why? Some students are like, this is shorter. Some of them are theorems, some of them are postulates. You'll have to remember which ones are which. So that's why I think you probably prefer just to write out what the postulate says. Okay, so see these markings? These lines are parallel. We can conclude that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, because those are corresponding angles. Now if I go back really quickly to the example we did here, see how they're not parallel? You can still call them corresponding angles, but you can't say they're congruent. Does that make sense? Because the lines, if you look at them, like these are not the same measurement. But we can still classify them as corresponding, they just don't follow the postulate. Okay? The next one, alternate interior angles theorem, says if and exteriors, it works for both. If two parallel lines are crossed by a transversal, then alternate interior angles, like 1 and 3, those will be congruent. So angle 1 would be congruent to angle 3. Those are alternate interior. If you look back at the bell ringer, we actually noticed that with numbers. We kind of proved it with numbers, using linear pairs, etc. And then let's add in a pair of alternate exterior angles as well. Let's put 5 down here and 6 up there. Those are alternating and exterior. So we could say angle 5 congruent to angle 6. And the last one, which is our same side interior angles. If two parallel lines are crossed by a transversal, then same side interior angles are supplementary. One way to remember that, S, S, and S. Same side supplementary. Same side supplementary. Okay? So any of the same side angles are going to end up being supplementary. So we would actually say that angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary, which would be using the same side interior angles theorem. If we know that angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary, what could I conclude after that? What do I know about supplementary angles? Marquise? They sum to 180. So you could say the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180. What would allow me to do that if I were doing a 2-column proof? What would allow me to sit in the reasons column? What would I write? Going from the word supplementary to the number 180. Noah?
Would that be the angle addition postulate?
Nope. Angle addition postulate would be if we had two adjacent angles and we were adding them together. These two are not adjacent. Very good. Definition of supplementary angles. And I'm just like adding a little piece here, just kind of setting us up. We will get to proofs next week. And then the last thing that you should see, this is for those visual people. Again, another little organizational. So if you see the alternate interiors, I put stars and circles so you can see where they're located. So for any of you that are visual learners, you can look back at this little summary chart that gives you, again, a little description, and it tells you a little bit of the postulates. So this is just kind of to help you for my visual people. All right, so flipping to the back then. We're going to actually find the measure of angles now that we know. So first of all, in the picture we want to put in what they tell me. So the measure of angle 3 is 102. So go to where angle 3 is and label it 102. Find the measure of angle 5 and the measure of angle 1. Now some students like to fill in the whole thing right now, which you can do if you want. Others just like to find the angles that they ask about. So let's do this first and then I'll show it the other way. 3 and 5 are what type? Trace the angles. 3 and 5 are what type? Corresponding alternate interior, alternate exterior, same side interior, or same side exterior. Maybe I should trace this. Would be my transversal. These are my lines. 3 and 5. Marquise?
Alternate interior.
Good. Angle 3 and 5 are alternate interior angles. And do you see how these are marked as parallel lines? We can see the little parallel line markings. So we know if two lines are parallel, then AIA have to be congruent. So if angle 3 is 102, angle 5 is congruent to that, which means it's equal in measure. So this would also be 102. Now angle 1, okay, now you can either look at angle 1 and its relationship to 3. What type of angles are 1 and 3? There's something we learned before today. Kale? These are vertical angles. And what do we know about vertical angles? Well, the vertical angles, Darren. They have the same measure, or they are congruent. So if this is 102, that is also 102. Now you could have also done corresponding. Does everyone see how angle 5 and angle 1 are in the same top left, top left? So you could have used either corresponding or vertical angles. Okay, same picture, different numbers. Angle 1 is 150. Find the measure of angle 5. What would the measure of angle 5 have to be? Think about what type of angles 1 and 5 are. Trace them. What type are they? Marquise? It would be 150. What type of angles are they? These two. Trace your lines if you need to. One's inside, one's outside. Maddie? They are corresponding angles. Top left, top left. They have to be congruent by the corresponding angles postulate. Now they want angle 4. And as soon as you find an angle, you might want to put it in the picture. How big would angle 4 have to be? Marquise?
30.
30. Two ways to find that. The easiest one is to notice that angle 1 and 4 together form a straight line, which means they're a linear pair, which means they're supplementary. So 180 minus 150 is 30. Now the other thing you could have used is the fact that 4 and 5 are same side interior, right? Same side inside, they're supplementary also, which would be 180 minus 150. Okay. Now I'm going to show you how you could come up with all of the angles in the picture. Some students like to do this. Angle 8 is 20. Before I even look at the question, if you want, you can find out every angle in this whole picture by knowing that they're parallel lines. You can use vertical angles, first of all. If this is 20, angle 6 is going to be 20. You could use corresponding or alternate interior angles. So alternate interior, some students like those, or some students like corresponding. This would also be 20, angle 4. And then up here you could use vertical, or alternate exterior. You could do alternate exterior. This would also be 20. And then you can use linear pairs to find the other pair. So if this is 20, and the total thing has to be 180, this would be 160. And then you can use vertical again to get angle 3, which is 160. Down here doing the same thing, 160 and 160 using a linear pair and vertical. So you basically see the same number showing up multiple places. So we now can just look back. Angle 4 was this one, that's 20. And angle 6 was this one, that's also 20. All right, we're going to skip over D just so we can get to one of the algebra problems. Now, on the algebra problems, you have one picture for multiple questions, so I'd probably use pencil on this. Okay. It says the measure of angle 1 is 3x. So if you're using pen, I would just watch up here. If you have pencil, you're going to want to erase. Label that. The measure of angle 5 is x plus 80. Find the measure of angle 1, 5, and 7. First of all, you have to figure out what x is. So trace the angles again. Okay, trace the angles. So the transversal would be line T, which means the two lines in question are these. Now you may want to rotate your picture sideways to see what type of angles these are. What type of angles are these? Cal? Good. These are alternate exterior angles, AEA. And we know they tell us that these lines are parallel. No, they mark them right here. We know that alternate exterior angles have to be congruent by the theorem we saw today. So if these are congruent, that means that their measures are equal, so we will set them equal to each other. And solve. Subtract. We get x is 40. Then you plug it back in. 3 times 40 is 120. This is 120. 40 plus 80 is 120. So we know we did it right? Because those have to be the same. What would the measure of angle 7 have to be? Maddie? 120. These are vertical angles. So you don't want to forget what we learned last chapter with vertical angles. Okay, see if you can erase the picture. So reset the picture back to its starting point. And see if we can set up, let's do C. Do C. Skip B. I'll do B on the video. Ooh. I'll do B and C on the video. So if you guys want, I'll do a part 2. I'll do an extension.